Authorities in New Mexico are getting ready to share new details today of the investigation into the deaths of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife and one of the couple's dogs.
For decades, Gene Hackman kept his private life tightly guarded, but now his daughter has broken the silence. In a raw, unexpected moment, she revealed something about her father that stunned even longtime fans. This isn't gossip. This isn't speculation. It's the kind of truth that changes how you see a Hollywood legend forever. What she shared will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the man behind the movies. It started like something out of a movie, quiet, eerie, and full of questions. On February 26th, a caretaker made a routine visit to the Santa Fe home of Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa. What they found inside wasn't routine at all. The door was unlocked, the house was still, and inside, 2 lives were gone. Gene Hackman, the legendary Oscar-winning actor, and Betsy, his wife of decades, were both found dead in separate rooms of their gated home.
We're looking forward to getting more information, Gail. Good morning. So far, investigators aren't giving many details about what they may reveal in today's news conference, but we do know the autopsies are complete, and we anticipate learning more about the results this afternoon.
The discovery was shocking enough, but it was the details that made everything feel stranger. Betsy's body was in a bathroom next to scattered prescription pills. Gene was found in another part of the house, lying close to his walking cane. Nearby, their German Shepherd was also found dead, inside a bathroom closet. 2 other dogs were alive but clearly distressed. At first, the public assumed it was a tragic but natural passing. Gene was 94 years old. Betsy had stayed out of the spotlight for years. Maybe it was just old age or a medical emergency they couldn't recover from. But then the timeline came out, and the questions got louder. Authorities believed they had been dead for about a week before anyone found them. It didn't make sense to many. How could no one have noticed? How could such a famous man and his wife be gone for days without a word? When investigators revealed that Gene's pacemaker had stopped working on February 17th, it only added more mystery. What happened that day? Did he fall? Did Betsy try to help? Or was she already gone before him? No one could say for sure, and it wasn't just the timeline that raised eyebrows. The house wasn't ransacked. There was no clear sign of violence, but there were medications, cell phones, a planner, and little signs that life had been going on as usual. Until suddenly, it wasn't. Authorities ruled out carbon monoxide poisoning early on, but the full toxicology reports were still pending. The quiet confusion quickly turned into public suspicion. This wasn't just the passing of a Hollywood icon. It was the beginning of a mystery, one that felt like it had more questions than answers. And as whispers started to spread, people began wondering if there was more to Gene Hackman's story than anyone had ever imagined.
Still many questions remain, including how they died. So here's what we know. Their bodies were found by a caretaker in their gated community on February 26th, and that's the person who called 911. Now, investigators say it appears the couple died in a similar time frame, about a week before they were found. We now know that on February 17th, Hackman's pacemaker stopped working. That's according to the Santa Fe sheriff, and we're expecting to learn a little more about that today.
It all could have ended with a quiet funeral and a respectful goodbye to one of Hollywood's most private legends. That was the plan, at least. Gene Hackman had always kept his personal life away from the spotlight. He rarely gave interviews. He avoided red carpets in his later years. Even his death, quiet, tragic, and strange, seemed like the last chapter of a private man's private story. But that story didn't end with silence. It ended with a voice, his daughter's. Elizabeth Hackman wasn't looking for attention. She had lived most of her life out of the public eye, just like her father. But when the media firestorm hit after Gene and Betsy's bodies were found, something shifted. Rumors had already started to spread. Whispers on message boards, anonymous posts on Reddit, theories about what really happened in that New Mexico home. Some people pointed to health issues. Others hinted at a possible overdose or quiet suicide pact. But there was one rumor that refused to go away. One that Elizabeth herself became part of. At first, it was just a few vague comments online. Someone claiming to know someone who once worked with Hackman. Someone else saying they'd heard things years ago. The claims were bold. Gene Hackman had lived a double life. That he may have been hiding something for decades. Specifically, that he'd had romantic relationships with men, long kept secret from the public and even from his family. Most people dismissed it immediately. It sounded like classic tabloid gossip. Disrespectful, baseless. The kind of thing that surfaces whenever a celebrity dies unexpectedly. But then Elizabeth spoke. It wasn't a press conference or a tell-all interview. It started as a quiet conversation, something she reportedly shared with close friends. A memory, a moment she never thought she'd need to talk about. According to those sources, Elizabeth once visited her father on a movie set years ago when she was in her 20s. It was unplanned, just a casual drop-in. She wandered around, looking for his trailer, expecting to surprise him. But instead, she saw something that left her completely frozen. She said she saw Gene Hackman.
Now, the sheriff's office says Betsy Arakawa's body was found in an open bathroom with prescription pills scattered on the counter, while Hackman's body was found in the mudroom with his walking cane nearby. Now, authorities found blood pressure and thyroid medications, a monthly planner, and 2 cell phones that they had planned to analyze. And they've also checked into carbon monoxide poisoning, and they say right now it's unlikely, but we'll find out much more from toxicology reports, which could take a lot more time to complete, but hopefully we get more information later this afternoon.
Alone with another man, and not just talking, not rehearsing. She said they were kissing. She never confronted him, never brought it up. She left quietly and never told anyone until now. The moment her story made its way to the public, everything exploded. Headlines lit up, talk shows speculated, Twitter threads spiraled out of control. For decades, Hackman had been seen as the tough guy of American cinema. Gritty, gutsy, always masculine, always controlled. This revelation didn't just challenge that image, it shattered it. Fans were stunned, some were furious, others were curious. And many people didn't know what to believe. Elizabeth eventually decided to speak directly, not with accusations, not with anger, but with something quieter, honesty. She confirmed the story. She said it happened exactly as she remembered. She said she wasn't trying to shame her father or destroy his legacy. She wasn't even sure why she was sharing it now, except that the rumors were already out there, and she didn't want to lie. She didn't give dates. She didn't name the other man. She said she didn't have proof, just a memory that had stayed with her for years. She also said it didn't change how she felt about her dad. He was complicated, she wrote in a social media post. He was private, and he was still the man who raised me. Nothing changes that. That didn't stop the firestorm. Supporters and critics clashed online. Some praised Elizabeth for her courage, saying her honesty helped others feel seen. Others said she should have stayed silent, that her father deserved privacy, even in death. Some accused her of seeking attention. Others accused her of lying outright. The media didn't help. Every outlet ran with the story. Old photos were dragged out. Interviews were rewatched. Clips from Hackman's films were analyzed for clues. Fans began wondering aloud if certain roles had deeper meaning. Was he ever trying to tell the world something through his work? Was the silence a burden? A choice? A necessity? Hollywood insiders started to weigh in, quietly at first, then more openly. Some said they'd heard whispers for years, but no one ever said anything out loud. Back then, one veteran producer said anonymously, "You didn't talk about that kind of thing, especially not with someone like Gene. He kept things tight." Others dismissed the whole idea as nonsense, saying Hackman was simply a private man and always had been. And then came the theories. Had he been blackmailed? Was the stress of hiding something part of what led to his health decline? Did Betsy know? Was she protecting him or hiding something herself? The lack of clear answers only made people dig deeper. Elizabeth stayed mostly quiet after her initial statement, but the damage, or the awakening, depending on who you asked, was done. Gene Hackman, the man who had spent a lifetime controlling his image, was now being re-examined in a way he never would have allowed. His death no longer felt like the end of a story. It felt like the beginning of another one. For some fans, it was too much. They refused to believe it. They called it disrespectful. They clung to the idea that Gene Hackman was exactly who he always appeared to be. For others, though, Elizabeth's story made him feel more real, more human. Not less of a man, but maybe a more complex one. A man who had struggled, who had secrets, who maybe lived a quiet kind of pain. And in that space, between belief and denial, between anger and compassion, the public curiosity only grew. People wanted to know more, but there wasn't more to give. Just one story, one moment, one kiss seen through the eyes of a daughter who didn't understand it at the time and still wasn't sure how to explain it. Whatever the truth is, one thing is certain. Gene Hackman's story now has a new chapter, one written not by directors or screenwriters, but by his own family. And whether people accept it or not, it's a chapter that can't be unwritten. The moment Elizabeth Hackman's revelation hit the internet, everything changed. What started as a quiet tragedy, the unexpected death of one of Hollywood's most respected actors, suddenly turned into a storm of questions, arguments, and wild theories, and it all played out online, in real time, where emotions ran high and the line between truth and rumor blurred instantly. At first, fans were simply shocked. The internet was filled with tributes to Gene Hackman. People shared their favorite scenes, favorite quotes, and memories of watching his movies with their families. It was the kind of online mourning you'd expect for someone who had left such a lasting mark on film history. But then the whispers began. Anonymous posts started popping up on Reddit, in comment sections, and in old fan forums that hadn't seen activity in years. Some hinted at a double life. Others referenced rumors that had been floating quietly behind the scenes for decades. And then, Elizabeth spoke. Her story, about walking in on her father kissing another man, hit the internet like a bomb. For many, it was unbelievable. Gene Hackman, the tough guy from The French Connection and Unforgiven, the man who'd always kept his personal life tightly locked away, it didn't make sense. And yet, the source was his own daughter. She didn't sound like someone chasing fame. She didn't give tabloids a dramatic interview. She spoke calmly, quietly, and, most importantly, without anger. Still, the internet doesn't do calm. Within hours, Gene Hackman was trending on Twitter. People on all sides jumped into the conversation. Some defended Elizabeth, praising her for speaking out. Others attacked her, calling her a liar or attention seeker. Fan pages and movie blogs were flooded with debates. People started sharing grainy photos, half-remembered stories, and old articles that they now claimed were obvious signs of a hidden truth. Whether there was any real proof didn't seem to matter. The internet had latched onto the story, and it wasn't letting go. Reddit threads exploded with theories. Some users insisted they had insider knowledge. One person claimed they'd seen Hackman at a private party years ago with another man. Another said they worked security at a restaurant and saw him meeting someone regularly in the back booth. None of it was confirmed. None of it could be verified. But that didn't stop the rumors from spreading like wildfire. YouTube creators jumped on the trend next. Channels that usually reviewed movies suddenly pivoted to full-on investigations. They pulled clips from Hackman's interviews, pausing on facial expressions, analyzing body language, and trying to decode his answers to personal questions. They replayed red carpet footage in slow motion. They compared how he interacted with male co-stars versus female ones. It was obsessive and often ridiculous, but it got clicks. And that was all that mattered. TikTok followed. Young creators, many of whom had never seen a Gene Hackman movie, made videos breaking down the story in 30-second chunks. Some showed empathy, calling out how hard it must have been to hide that kind of truth for so long. Others mocked the whole situation, turning it into memes and viral jokes. The story had become entertainment now, not just news. It had gone viral, and the truth, whatever it was, got lost in the chaos. Then came the backlash to the backlash. Longtime fans began pushing back hard. They filled comment sections with support for Gene, calling the rumors disgusting, disrespectful, and completely unfounded. They said Elizabeth's story was a betrayal. Some even went as far as accusing her of making it up to get media attention in the wake of her father's death. "He's not here to defend himself," one comment read. "You wait until the man is gone, then throw dirt on his name? That's not love." But others saw it differently. They argued that Elizabeth didn't owe anyone silence, that her story didn't erase Gene's accomplishments. It just added a new layer to who he was. "He's still a legend," one tweet read, "but legends are people too. Complicated, flawed, human." These fans didn't see the story as a scandal. They saw it as a moment of vulnerability, even bravery. In the middle of all this, the media played its usual role. Some outlets treated the story with care, quoting Elizabeth directly, offering context, and avoiding sensational headlines. Others went full tabloid. Words like secret life, shocking truth, and Hollywood betrayal were everywhere. Hackman's name was suddenly less about his decades of acting excellence and more about gossip, drama, and scandal. The hardest part for many fans was the uncertainty. No one really knew what was true. Elizabeth had shared a single memory, one moment. There was no video, no photos, no names, just a quiet story that, once released, could never be taken back. And yet, that one moment had thrown everything into question. People began looking at his life differently. They revisited his roles, looking for clues that maybe were never there. Was his character in the birdcage a choice or coincidence? Was there something deeper in his portrayal of tortured or conflicted men? It all became part of the internet puzzle, where everything is a clue if you stare long enough. Some fans called for respect. Others demanded more answers. Elizabeth stayed mostly quiet, making only 1 or 2 brief follow-up posts where she tried to calm things down. "I didn't mean to start a storm," she wrote. "I just wanted to be honest about something I saw. That's all." But by then, it was too late. The internet doesn't go backward. What followed was something more difficult to define. A split in Hackman's legacy. Not a collapse, not a cancellation, but a shift. For some, he remained untouched. A legendary actor, a private man who deserved peace. For others, he became something else entirely. A symbol of how much we never really know about the people we admire. Hollywood has always been built on stories. The ones we see on screen, the ones we hear in interviews, and the ones that get buried until they don't. For weeks, fans battled over what Gene Hackman's story meant now. Was it a warning about prying too deep into someone's personal life? Or was it a call to be more honest about the realities people hide for fear of judgment? In the end, the internet didn't find closure. It rarely does. The comments kept coming, the theories kept spinning, and the legacy of Gene Hackman, once simple and solid, became layered, debated, and, in some ways, more human than ever. That's what stories do when they're left open. They grow, they stretch, they echo. And this one, it seems, is far from over. When the internet exploded with whispers, accusations, and headlines about Gene Hackman's private life, it didn't take long for his family to react. At the center of it all was Elizabeth Hackman, his daughter, whose quiet but powerful story had accidentally poured gasoline on an already growing fire. What she said had turned a private family tragedy into a very public debate. But now the rest of the Hackman family was stepping forward, not with stories but with firm pushback. At first, there was silence. After Gene and his wife Betsy were found dead, the family had asked for privacy. Most people respected that, but as the days went on and Elizabeth's revelations spread like wildfire online, silence was no longer an option. The family started hearing from people they didn't know. Emails, messages, even reporters asking for statements. It was no longer just about mourning. It was about managing damage. That's when the official statement came out. A spokesperson for the Hackman family released a short but sharp message. The rumors were false. The stories being told, especially those involving Gene's personal life, were unfounded and deeply hurtful. The family made it clear that they believed Gene Hackman had lived a private, honorable life, and that any claims suggesting otherwise were not only disrespectful, but also completely out of line. But the internet doesn't stop for statements. The moment the denial was made public, it only added fuel to the fire. People began asking, if the rumors were so false, why respond at all? Why not just ignore them? Others said the family had every right to protect their father's name, especially when he wasn't around to speak for himself. The line between truth, privacy, and respect was getting thinner by the hour. Behind the scenes, the family was hurting, not just from the loss, but from the chaos that followed it. Elizabeth, especially, was caught in the middle. She hadn't expected her words to go so far. What she had shared was a memory, raw, unpolished, and not meant to be a public spectacle. She hadn't named names. She hadn't accused her father of anything wrong. She had simply told the truth about something she saw. But now her entire family was facing the consequences. Relatives started to speak out in private. Some were furious with Elizabeth for saying anything at all. They believed she had stained her father's legacy at a time when people should have been celebrating his life and his work. Others were more understanding, knowing that grief shows up in strange ways and that maybe Elizabeth had been carrying this story for too long. Still, the damage was done, and opinions inside the family were just as divided as those outside. Gene's legacy, once crystal clear, had now become blurry. Before, people spoke of him as a legend, a Hollywood icon who chose to step away from fame and live a quiet life. Now that quiet life was being examined under a microscope. Some fans tried to keep the focus on his work, praising his unforgettable roles and unmatched talent. Others couldn't stop wondering about the man behind the scenes. Was he misunderstood? Was he hiding something? Or was the truth simpler than people wanted to admit? The debate over his legacy wasn't just about one rumor. It was about how society views its heroes, how we celebrate them, protect them, and sometimes tear them down. In Gene Hackman's case, his career had never really been touched by scandal. He wasn't the type to chase fame. He didn't do many interviews. He didn't post on social media. He acted, then stepped away. And maybe that's why the revelation from his daughter hit so hard. It cracked open something people thought was solid. The media played a big role in that too. While some outlets respected the family's wishes and toned down their coverage, others ran with the story. Clickbait headlines spread everywhere, pulling in readers with every twist and theory. Suddenly, Gene Hackman's name was attached to phrases like secret life, shocking truth, and hidden past. It wasn't just about honoring a late actor anymore. It had become a full-blown media circus, and through it all, the family kept pushing back. Not just through official statements, but in quiet ways too. Some of Hackman's grandchildren posted photos of him, smiling, reading, playing with the family dogs, alongside captions about how much he meant to them. They didn't mention the rumors. They didn't talk about the controversy. They just reminded the world that, for them, Gene Hackman wasn't a headline. He was a father, a grandfather, a man they loved deeply. But even with their efforts, the debate didn't go away. In fact, it only grew louder as more people started weighing in. Comment sections were flooded with arguments. Some users said the family was right to defend Hackman's legacy. Others accused them of hiding the truth. It was a war of opinions, one where no one really knew the full story, but everyone had something to say. And maybe that's the real tragedy, that in the middle of all this noise, the memory of Gene Hackman was being pulled in too many directions. For fans, it was confusing. For his family, it was painful. And for Elizabeth, it was something she never saw coming. She had wanted to tell the truth, not to shame her father, but to be honest about what she had experienced. But now, even she wasn't sure if speaking up had been the right thing. As days turned into weeks, the story began to settle, but not disappear. Gene Hackman's legacy was still being discussed, still being debated. For some, nothing had changed. He was still the brilliant actor who had shaped their love for film. For others, everything had changed. The mystery, the rumors, the family drama, it all became part of how they saw him now. And somewhere in between stood a family trying to grieve, trying to remember a man they loved, trying to hold on to a legacy that suddenly felt less certain, less secure. They wanted peace. They wanted respect. But in the age of viral stories and nonstop speculation, peace was hard to come by. In the end, the family's pushback was never about silencing anyone. It was about protecting something fragile, the memory of someone who had always kept his life private. Whether or not Elizabeth's story was true, whether or not it should have been shared, the fallout had already happened. And now, the Hackmans were left to pick up the pieces. Gene Hackman may be gone, but the debate over his legacy is still alive. Not because he did something wrong, not because the world needed a new scandal, but because, once again, people were reminded that even legends are human, and that being human is never as simple as the movies make it seem.